She only wanted to prove she was strong enough, balanced enough, capable enough. But in the middle of a crowded store, laughter echoed. The manager smirked, waving money in the air. "Got balance? I'll pay double," he mocked as the little black girl held back her tears. What nobody knew was that this girl wasn't just any child. She carried a name, a legacy, and a secret that would turn that cruel laughter into stunned silence. By the time the truth came out, the entire room wished they had never doubted her. The day began like any other inside the bustling shopping centre. Shoppers hurried past one another, their arms weighed down with bags, their voices echoing beneath bright lights and polished marble floors. Near the entrance of a trendy store, a young black girl wandered quietly, her shoes slightly worn, her dress simple yet neat. She was only 10, but her eyes carried the kind of depth that made people look twice. The manager, a tall man with a self-satisfied grin, spotted her almost immediately. He didn't see a child full of potential. He didn't see dignity, pride, or innocence. What he saw was someone he believed didn't belong in his store. He leaned against the counter, amused as the girl studied a pair of balance boards stacked near the window. "Got balance?" he asked loudly, drawing the attention of curious shoppers. "I'll pay double if you can last longer than me." His words dripped with sarcasm, more performance than offer. The crowd chuckled, expecting a scene. The girl's small hands tightened at her sides. She had heard that tone before. Mocking, dismissive, daring her to prove she was worth the air she breathed. Behind her, whispers travelled quickly. Who let her in? Why doesn't she leave? Still, she didn't back down. Slowly, she stepped forward toward the challenge, not out of pride, but out of something deeper. A quiet determination to show that her worth wasn't for sale, and that no one's mockery could define her. What the manager, and everyone watching, failed to realize was that this little girl's story stretched far beyond the polished floors of a department store, and soon their smirks would vanish into stunned disbelief. The manager smirked as he motioned for the girl to step onto the balance board. He expected a stumble, maybe a fall, something to spark laughter from the growing crowd. Shoppers pressed closer, some pulling out their phones, eager to capture what they thought would be another viral moment of humiliation. The little black girl adjusted her stance carefully, her eyes calm, her body steady. With quiet focus, she placed one foot, then the other, on the sleek board. The room fell oddly silent, curiosity replacing condescension. At first, her movements were tentative, almost fragile. But within seconds, she found a rhythm. She wasn't just balancing. She was gliding, flowing, as if the board had been waiting for her all along. The crowd's laughter faltered into murmurs of surprise. The manager, unwilling to lose face, hopped onto a board himself. He exaggerated his motions, arms flailing for attention, as if mocking her. Yet while he fought desperately to maintain control, she moved with elegance and grace, her small frame steady against the pull of gravity. Minutes ticked by. Sweat beaded on his forehead while the girl remained composed, her expression unshaken. Each tilt of the board seemed effortless under her control. Every second she remained balanced felt like a silent defiance, an unspoken reminder that strength doesn't need to shout. The shoppers' whispers began to shift. "She's really good. Look at her go!" Their tones carried awe now, a stark contrast to the mockery that had filled the room earlier. But then came the cruel twist. The manager, red-faced and humiliated, stepped off abruptly, pretending it was his idea all along. With a smug wave, he dismissed her. "Enough. Show's over," he muttered, his voice cracking. He wanted to strip her of victory. to reduce her accomplishment to nothing. Yet the crowd wasn't ready to move on. They had seen something they couldn't ignore. Resilience, talent, dignity in its purest form. The little girl stood quietly, not celebrating, not gloating, just existing in her triumph. Among the faces in the crowd was a man the manager hadn't noticed. A sharply dressed figure with a commanding presence. His eyes had been fixed on the girl the entire time, not with ridicule, but with recognition. While others saw a child proving herself, he saw something else entirely. His daughter. What happened next would not only silence the laughter, but rewrite the story of who truly held power in that room. The room shifted the moment the man in the tailored suit stepped forward. Conversations hushed, phones lowered, and all eyes turned toward him. The manager, still catching his breath from his failed attempt on the balance board, straightened nervously, sensing authority radiating from the stranger. The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His mere presence demanded respect. He looked past the murmuring crowd and fixed his gaze on the girl. Her steady composure, her quiet strength, her refusal to shrink even after being mocked. With a calm stride, he closed the distance, and the manager finally noticed the resemblance. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the truth became undeniable. The little black girl wasn't just some random child dragged into a cruel spectacle. She was the CEO's daughter. The manager's smirk collapsed into panic. His skin drained of color. His hands twitched as if trying to undo the damage already done. But there was no escape from the eyes of the very man who had built the empire under which he now stood employed. The CEO knelt briefly to the girl's level, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. It was not a grand gesture, but it carried the weight of power, protection, and pride. Then he rose, his sharp gaze cutting through the air like a blade as he turned to the manager. No words were spoken aloud, but the silence was deafening. Every person in that room felt the crushing weight of what had just been revealed. The cruel mockery that had begun as a spectacle was now a career-ending mistake. The manager stammered, his voice breaking in desperation, but the damage was done. He had mocked the wrong child, not only a child of color, but the daughter of the man who signed his checks, who controlled his future. In that moment, the balance of power shifted entirely. What began as ridicule ended as reckoning. The crowd that had once laughed at the manager's cruel taunts now stood frozen, their shame heavy in the air. The balance board lay abandoned on the floor, no longer a symbol of ridicule, but of a moment that had unmasked true character. The CEO didn't need theatrics or rage to make his point. His silence, his steady presence beside his daughter, carried more power than any words the manager could utter. Slowly he turned to face the onlookers, his voice calm yet sharp, like steel wrapped in velvet. He spoke not of profits or performance, but of dignity, the very thing that had been stripped away when his child was mocked for something as trivial as balance. Every person present felt the sting of those words. They realized the lesson wasn't just for the manager. It was for them too. They had stood idle, entertained even, while cruelty played out before their eyes. Now, confronted with the truth, many looked away, ashamed of their silence. The manager, trembling, tried to plead for forgiveness, but his desperation only deepened the weight of the moment. The CEO didn't respond with anger. Instead, he simply placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder and led her out, leaving the room in stunned silence. That simple act, walking away with dignity, spoke louder than any outburst ever could. News of the incident spread quickly beyond the walls of the company. It became more than a story of one man's downfall. It became a mirror held up to society. Conversations erupted about bias, about how quickly people laugh at cruelty when the victim is different, and about the power of resilience in the face of mockery. For the little girl, it was not just a moment of humiliation, but of triumph. She had endured the ridicule with quiet strength, never breaking, never letting the world see her falter. And when the truth was revealed, it wasn't her weakness that people remembered. It was her composure, her unshaken dignity. The manager's career crumbled in the days that followed, but the lesson remained far greater than his downfall. It wasn't about wealth or titles or even punishment. It was about the reminder that the measure of a person lies not in how they mock the vulnerable, but in how they honor them. So ask yourself, when cruelty unfolds before your eyes, will you be silent in the crowd? Or will you choose to stand with dignity? Because sometimes the quietest strength can echo the loudest.